My practice with the cold is intentional and mindful and grounding and challenging. And I have all of these tools and tips and techniques that I use through the cold and elsewhere in life. It all just came together.
I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. Over the past 20 plus years, I have managed to wean myself off almost all drugstore remedies. However, there has been one that was hard to let go of, and that was cough syrup. Now, I rarely get sick because of the lifestyle I lead, thankfully, but every once in a while, cold or flu will sneak in. And when that happens, I do not like having a cough. So I've often been put in a position where I've got to go get some of that super toxic cough syrup from the drugstore because I just want relief. Well, the good news is for me and possibly for you is that our sponsor, Beekeepers Naturals, the ultimate bee product company, came out recently with their incredible Bee Soothed cough syrup. So as a result, I've officially ditched the old school drugstore stuff and I'll just keep my natural medicine cabinet stocked up with this particular product. Unlike the pharmaceutical cough syrups, the only downside I can see at this point to the Bee Soothed cough syrup is that it tastes so damn good. It's actually kind of difficult to not just drink it as an elixir, and you could because it doesn't have anything other than amazing bee products in it. The reason Bee Soothed is so badass is because it's naturally powered by potent natural ingredients like pure buckwheat honey, elderberry, chaga mushroom, bee propolis, and olive leaf extract. So it doesn't have any drugs, dyes, dirty chemicals, sugars, none of that stuff. So I recommend taking it the moment you start to feel run down or get that little tickle of a sore throat. So to get your hands on some Bee Soothed cough syrup, here's what you do. Go to beekeepersnaturals.com. That's beekeepersnaturals. Beekeepersnaturals.com/Luke Story is the site you want to visit because if you use that link, you're going to get 15% off your order at beekeepersnaturals.com/Luke Story. Due to eating a bunch of crappy food and living a pretty unhealthy lifestyle earlier in life, I did a lot of damage to my gut. So I've been working on restoring my gut health for a long time. And I recently discovered something from a company called bodybio.com that has completely changed the game. It's been incredible. I did some gut testing with my doctor, Dr. Scott Schur, and he found that I was low in something called butyrate. And I was like, what's butyrate? And he said, well, you're supposed to have it in your gut and you don't. So this company from Body Bio makes this product called Butyrate. Butyrate is a postbiotic. It's a short-chain fatty acid that promotes a healthy microbiome, improves gut function, supports a healthy inflammation response, and improves cell health on the genetic level by protecting DNA. So I did these tests and I started taking this Butyrate product by Body Bio and recently retested, and the problem solved. It's incredible. I love when you can test something, take a product, and then it works. Butyrate is a postbiotic that's produced by your microbiome in the gut. So when we feed our gut cells and the microbiome the right foods, primarily resistant starch and soluble fiber, then the microbiome is super happy and appropriately regulates the immune system by producing this important molecule called butyrate. The problem is, like the problem was for me, that most of us don't eat enough foods to get healthy levels of butyrate, especially those of us on the keto and paleo diets. I would say I'm paleo-ish. Try to be keto, sometimes I fail. So butyrate is just an incredible supplement to add to your digestive health regimen. This is the #1 recommended butyrate supplement by integrative and functional practitioners. And as I said, it's had a hugely positive impact on my gut health and digestion after doing those labs. So I got in it for about 2 months and my levels were completely restored to normal. I keep taking it periodically just to make sure that they stay normal. So if you're someone who wants to improve your gut health and digestion, here is what you do. Go to bodybio.com. That's BODYBIO, bodybio.com. And when you get over to the site, you can use the code Luke20 to save 20% off all of your products. That's bodybio.com. Oh boy, I am stoked on this episode, guys. It's been a long time coming. This one's called Chill Out, the Ice Bath Revolution with Morozko Forge's Jason Stauffer and Adrienne Jezick. And if you know anything about me, you know that I've been doing cold therapy for 2 decades. And listeners will know that I have tried just about every method of ice baths, from the most high-end professional sports models to homemade chest freezers, and of course, any frozen body of water that I can find and get my body into. Now, some months ago, I found a company called Morozko Forge and was intrigued by their design due to the use of ozone as a disinfectant and their tub's ability to maintain a desired temperature, as well as actually creating ice, unlike any other commercial or personal grade ice bath on the market. So these guys really piqued my interest. Now, as fate would have it, I found their baths in use at a place called Optimize in Phoenix, Arizona, when Allison and I were en route to Texas and had to stop there to wait out the big winter storm that had just befallen this lovely city of Austin. Now, I was further stoked to learn that Morozko's headquarters was right there in Phoenix. So I hit them up and stopped by to see their incredible operation. It's like the Willy Wonka factory of ice baths. I also got a personal Morozko method session with Adrienne and had a chance to chill with the team. No pun intended, of course. That was, I have to say, probably the coldest ice bath of my life. And I stayed in for maybe, 4 or 5 minutes. And then we tried to have a conversation about having them on the show and getting to know them. And I could barely talk, even after jumping in and out of the infrared sauna in their demo room. Wow, it was quite an experience. So after meeting them, I knew that we had to sit down for an in-depth exploration of all things cold, because despite the fact that I've been such a proponent of cold therapy for so long, I've never actually done a dedicated episode all about it. And I guess fate was instructing me to wait for the just right guest. And I believe we've found 2 of them. Here's a quick breakdown of what we discuss in this conversation. How Jason, Adrienne, and their partner Tom met, what led them to get into cold therapy in the first place, the wild process that went into the creation of the Morozko Forge baths, the downsides of making your own and the safety concerns thereof, the power of the Morozko method, the mental, emotional, and spiritual benefits of cold exposure, and of course, the scientifically proven benefits of cold therapy, like how cold helps hormones and fat burning, and then the battle of pre-workout versus post-workout ice bathing, the benefits of hot and cold contrast, why cold water is supreme over cryotherapy, which uses cold air, the Morozko Method coach training program that these guys developed, why ozone is the safest water disinfectant for a tub, the best temperature and duration for a cold session and how often to do it, where they see the cold therapy industry going moving forward. And I want to let you know that by the end of this conversation, some of you will likely want to get a Morozko Forge tub of your own for your home or business. And these guys have been kind enough to offer our listeners a super sweet deal. If you go to morozkoforge.com and use the code Luke150, you'll receive a $150 discount on a cold forge and filtered forge model, or use the code Luke500 to receive a $500 discount on the purchase of their Prism Forge model, which is kind of the Rolls Royce of Morozko Forge ice baths. Again, the site is morozkoforge.com. Of course, you can find all of that information linked and coded in the show notes. So there you go with a little love from our guests. And if you find value in this episode, please take a moment to share it with a friend or 2, especially that friend you're thinking of right now who fears the cold. I believe people that have a hard time with cold temperatures are the ones that might, in fact, benefit from this conversation the most. Because, of course, we not only talk about the physical benefits of cold therapy, which are quite widely known, but due to the creation of the Morozko method, we, of course, go into depth about the emotional, mental, and spiritual benefits. And I think if someone could really grasp what's there for them with cold as their teacher, even someone who thinks they hate the cold might truly benefit. So with that, I invite you to share in learning about one of the most powerfully life-enhancing practices on earth, cold therapy. Enjoy the show. For those listening, we met a couple months back or so.
Time is irrelevant.
Yeah, time is really nebulous.
It was a couple months back.
Yes, I think you were on your way to Austin at the time.
Yeah, so we had stopped in Phoenix en route to moving here to Texas, and got essentially marooned there because of the storm here in Texas. And I was not mad at that, even though I was eager to get here because it was 80 degrees and sunny, and we had a quiet hotel kind of in Mesa, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was very sunny, and they had a pool. And I started going to this place, Optimize Me, which is the biohacking center there in Phoenix, mm-hmm. and they have a Morozko Forge cold plunge there, and the saunas and all the things. So I just started going there every day, and then lo and behold, ended up at your little Santa's Elves workshop out there. And I'm just like, I love seeing how things are made. Mm-hmm. So it was really fun for me, A, because I'm obsessed with cold exposure. B, I'm always curious, like what things look like and feel like before they're the final thing. So mm-hmm. really great to have had that experience and drop in with you guys and do what I think was probably the coldest and maybe longest and hardest to recover from ice bath of my whole life. When you put me in there and Adrienne and did your magic spells, which we're going to talk about, I just got so relaxed. I just kind of hung out in there, and I thought, well, I might as well just stay. I feel great. Mm-hmm. And then we had kind of a business-ish chat afterward, and it was extremely hard to talk because I was like T-Rexing. I was so cold. And the sauna, it was impervious to the sauna. It was that cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely the coldest on the market. It's the true ice bath, versus a cold plunge.
Yes.
So, a lot of the other solutions out there, they don't really get below 40, and ours will get down to 32, 33 degrees.
Hot damn. All right, I got a bunch of questions for you guys.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome.
Let me get out my scroll. First thing I want to ask y'all is, how did you two meet?
That is a really interesting story. So I was bartending at a restaurant in downtown Phoenix called Hanny's. It was probably my second to last year of college, getting my engineering degree. And I went back to school. It wasn't like in my early 20s. I went back to school when I was 29 on the GI Bill. And so I was in my early 30s by that point. And Adrienne was on a bad date. She showed up and sat at the bar, waiting for this very young man that she had met at a festival in Tempe to show up for their first date. And he ended up being 45 minutes late, which she was 15 minutes early. He was 45 minutes late, which meant that I had a good hour to chat with this beautiful woman who was sitting at the bar. And this poor kid, he walks in and I see, okay, the date has arrived, right? So now is my cue as a bartender to give them space and stop, being flirty and friendly with the woman at the bar. But I can still kind of hear what's going on. And he shows up and he goes to give her a hug, and Adrienne kind of stops him and says, "You smell like cigarette smoke. You told me you didn't smoke."
Oh, red flag.
Yeah.
Big one.
The kid says, well, sometimes I smoke when I drink. And she's like, okay, so you lied to me about smoking. You're 45 minutes late and you've already been drinking. She says, you're welcome to sit down. But just so you know, this is no longer a date.
Wow.
Like you just ran, your 3 strikes just went up real quick.
Wow, I love your direct approach.
And
some people do.
Yeah. He didn't, probably.
No. And he sits down and he's trying to argue his way back into like the date, which I don't know what was going on in his mind. He tries telling her, he's like, well, just so you know, I'm not going to pay for your drink. And she's like, it's a kettle dirty martini. You probably couldn't afford it anyways, you 23-year-old dumbass. And then he starts saying something about how she's being unreasonable. She's never going to meet a good man to give her children or some shit like that. And she says, well, I don't want children. And why are you still trying to, if you think you're getting somewhere with this argument, you're really not. So after 15, 20 minutes or so, he finally leaves. And I wrote my phone number on the back of a business card for the restaurant. And I slid it over to her and I said, I quit smoking 3 years ago. I have 2 children from a former marriage. I don't want any more. And so basically, here, I think I'm the guy that you were wanting to meet tonight. And she gave me her phone number and I called her the next day. And then we went out on a date, I think that Monday or Tuesday. And we've kind of been together ever since.
How long's that been?
Almost 9 years.
Yeah, it'll be 9 years this fall.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
Later on, I'd like to, if we have time, because there's so many other things I want to cover pertinent to this niche topic, but I would love to perhaps get into how you balance the working together part of your relationship. I know that's something many people do, and some people do it better than others, and you guys seem to have a great synergy. So bookmark that. I'm going to ask you, Adrienne, do you remember your first cold exposure or ice bath experience and what led you into participating in that?
That's a great question. I do remember. I don't know if I'll ever forget it. It's emblazoned in my physical muscle memory and my mind. I was really sick. In my early 30s, I was diagnosed with 3 separate autoimmune conditions: Hashimoto's, eosinophilic esophagitis, and urticaria. About 3 or 4 years into my illness, I'd gained 50 pounds. I was taking more than 20 plus prescription medications a day and 2 live antibody shots a month from an allergist. I was seeing 4 or 5 specialists regularly. I had tried naturopath, acupuncture, vitamins, supplements, cleanses, detoxes. I mean, I'd really overhauled my life and I wasn't getting better. And Jason had been introduced to deliberate cold exposure, specifically to ice baths, through a friend of ours, a yoga instructor in Phoenix, Gordon Ogden. And he would host these kind of Wim Hof breath work, ice baths at his house here and there at random, but I was never able to make it. And so Jason had the idea that we would just get our own tub, buy a whole bunch of ice, set it up in our backyard, and hold a session. And now, keeping in mind, I grew up in Florida. I lived in Hawaii. Phoenix summers are my favorite time of year. I am all about the heat. I love the heat. And I used to get angry at anything below 70 degrees. Like, you're sitting in a restaurant. I was talking to Allison about this. You're sitting in a restaurant.
She's the same way.
Yeah. And you're cold. You can't even focus on a meal or a conversation because you become emotionally dysregulated just from this temperature. And that's how I explained that I was truly at my wit's end and ready to try anything. And it was also coming up in a lot of the books that I was reading, Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. At this point, I think I'd begun Scott Carney's What Doesn't Kill Us. And even Ernest Hemingway talked about fasting and being in the cold and being cold in order to kind of jolt his system. So there were a lot of little things that were happening that said, you have to try this. You have to at least try this. And I thought, at that point, I really would have tried anything. If you'd have put ladybugs in front of me and said, take a ladybug cocktail, I would have tried it. So we got all the ice, we sat in the backyard, we did a breathwork session, and then went over to the tub, and it was filled with ice. I don't think it was 32, 33. I think it was probably in the high 30s, low 40s, because especially in Phoenix at this time, it was October 2017, November 2017. So I don't think it was that cold, but there was definitely a lot of ice. And what I did was I positioned my body over the tub. So if you could imagine this, I had 1 foot on each side and I had 1 hand on each side. And my brilliant idea was to just let go, drop myself in, hold my breath as long as I could, and see what I could do. I lasted 9 seconds. I jumped out. I freaked out. And I felt amazing. For the first time in years, I had relief from pain in my legs. For the first time in years, I had a sense of self-empowerment like I hadn't experienced so purely, I think probably in all of my life. It was that empowerment of, I never in a million years would have thought I could do something like that. It didn't matter that it was only 9 seconds. That 9 seconds was enough to completely change my life. And quite quickly, I just wanted to do it again. I don't know that I did it again that day. I don't think that I did, but it was only a couple, maybe 3 weeks later that we did another backyard session, and we started doing this more regularly on Sundays. Just invite a friend, they bring 2 bags of ice. We all, do a breath work. We throw our ice in, and it just became an instant craving. Like I felt like an instant ice addict because of this feeling of empowerment and this relief of pain and inflammation. And it amazed me. It amazed me that I survived.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that when they take their first plunge. It feels like at times, because your nervous system is signaling this, that you are about to die. I think about that just evolutionarily speaking, right? If any human fell in a body of water that was 33 degrees, it's not good news, right? So we have this signaling that's like, and that's the effect people have. And I can't wait to go into your perspective on how to not do it this way. But any virgins that I've popped into an ice bath, unless I coach them otherwise, are going to get in and go, It's like, that's what your nervous system is doing to protect you and tell you to get the hell out of there. But, when like you said, you can start to acclimate to it and build it into a practice like you guys now teach, can be incredibly powerful. So I see why it's stuck. For you, sir, what I'm curious about, because you have an engineering background, education wise, I'm curious about the process again, because I just love learning how the way things work. What did the tinkering look like for you to go from the homemade tub, which she described, which I've had many iterations of, but I suck at engineering, so never developed something, feasible. What was the tinkering like, and when did you eventually kind of strike gold as you have now? Because you guys have the most insane cold tubs ever, in my opinion. And I'm going to be really excited to get one soon. But I have been in them. So, what did you start to take apart and tinker around with to get you to something that actually worked?
So, my education is in civil, environmental, and sustainable engineering. I didn't go into that field after graduation. I kind of fell out of love with the idea of actually being a civil engineer. And so I found my way into healthcare systems and pharmaceutical analytics. That's just kind of what I ended up finding after college. So I had like a little bit of the technical education, and our business partner, Tom, he's a professor of engineering, PhD at Arizona State University, which is how he and I met. And so he had a lot of the technical background, but that really doesn't get you as far as you would think. It was important. It got us through some pretty significant gaps when we were doing that tinkering and those early experiments. But really, it came down to, I destroyed a few refrigerators in my backyard. I just started pulling them apart, trying to figure out how does this work? Like what makes the cold? Where does the thermal energy go into, and where does it dissipate to? That's one of the really important technical education backgrounds, is understanding that cold actually doesn't exist. Cold is not a thing. Cold is the absence of thermal energy. So, so it's
kind of like darkness and light, right?
Yeah.
Darkness doesn't exist. It's just the absence of light.
Absence of light.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's neat. Never thought about that.
So, in a refrigeration process, the refrigeration process isn't making things cold, it's drawing heat out. And so inside of a refrigerator, you put something in there that's, maybe 50, 60 degrees, and it's going to go down to, 40 or 35 or whatever you've got it set at. That thermal energy is being drawn out, and it has to be dissipated somewhere. And so taking crowbars and saws and screwdrivers to these refrigerators, which are not at all designed to come apart, was really the early proof of concepts and tinkerings that I did. And the first experiment was, I had found the cold making plate, which I just reverse myself. It's not making cold, it's pulling heat out.
Right.
But what I would later figure out is called an evaporator. And I pulled that out and I just dipped it into a styrofoam cooler that had water in it. I put the styrofoam lid on the top and I left the whole thing running overnight. So I wanted to understand, does it work this way? So does something that removes heat from, an air environment inside of a refrigerator, is that going to work inside of water? Is it going to keep up? Is it going to be able to draw that thermal energy out? And the next morning I went out there and sure enough, yeah, it does work that way. I had a nice little ice block. And so then just running different experiments and iterating forward, we really didn't even set out for this to be a consumer product. The initial idea was that we just wanted to have an all the time ice bath in our backyard. We were solving our own problems. We hadn't really discovered that there was a gap in the market and this kind of awakening of people finding this therapy and wanting to be able to do it on a more regular basis. We hadn't found that yet. We were just like, we want this 7 days a week.
Yeah. I imagine that a lot of great innovations come as a result of just not only, a gap in the market later on, but a gap in something that you just want to be on the market and doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
So you just, I'm going to make it.
Yeah. Somebody should do something about this. Well, I'm somebody.
Yeah.
And so from there, I tore apart a couple more refrigerators. One of them was a really big, actual large freezer that we were using, because one of the solutions we tried before this was, can we make our own ice blocks so that we're not going to the store every week and buying 200 pounds of ice? I was using Costco pretzel containers that I'd cut in half and Costco salsa tubs, and trying to make ice blocks all week long.
Giant ice cubes?
Yeah. And I was doing it, and it was an hour and a half of work every night to try to get the ice block out of the plastic container, get it stacked up in that freezer, and then start the process over again. And then at the end of the week, we were still only getting one ice bath a week, And so I sacrificed that big freezer and, pulled it apart, sacrificed we bought a dorm fridge and just to sacrifice it, just to take it home and pull it apart. And then we took our galvanized tub and we put it on top of a pile of sand, because sand has a really good insulative value. Built a pine box around it and took $300 worth of spray foam insulation and just sprayed it in all the corners to create an insulated surface. And we had these evaporators just over the side of the tub in the water, and the door from that freezer was just on top. And it's summertime in Phoenix by this point, so it's 115 degrees outside. And so this was the next experiment. Does it work this way? Can I make a larger body of water cold by taking these evaporators and putting them in the water? And I think it was 3 days later, the answer was yes. I had a 33 degree body of water and some ice chunks forming on these evaporator coils. And so that was our first forge.
And when after that was it that iteration of it that made you think, wow, maybe there's other people that really enjoy cold plunges like we do, and we could make more and sell them to people?
Mm-hmm. The timing is nebulous. So it was kind of this awakening. Tom, who is a research scientist and engineering scientist, he was getting into scientific literature and starting to connect a lot of dots in the different benefits that this therapy actually has. That it wasn't just a parlor trick or something to make you feel really good or look like you're an insane person to your friend. That there's a lot of different benefits physiologically, psychologically to doing this. And at the same time, we were starting to follow social media hashtags, Wim Hof culture, things like that. And I kept seeing the same Costco salsa containers on Instagram because other people were trying to solve the same problem that we were trying to solve.
Funny.
And so through this process, we kind of awakened to this need that people were like, I want more cold. My swimming pool does it in, the winter, but by the time it's summer, I'm just trying to make ice blocks out of Costco salsa containers and just trying to get more cold more often. And through that understanding of how elegant and powerful the therapy is for human physiology and psychology, and also that there was so many people out there that were waking up to this and trying to solve the same problem we were trying to solve. That's when we were like, this is a company. And that's when we started iterating that design forward and just trying to figure out the configuration to make it a shippable consumer product that people would want to buy and would resonate with.
I'm sure that's no small feat either. I can only imagine. My beginner, I've realized I've been doing cold plunges pretty much most of my life out in nature, just getting in freezing water to just see if I could do it. And it just felt really good. But when I first started doing the ice baths, I, again, like you, saw someone on Instagram, probably with a Wim Hof hashtag or something, had done a couple of his trainings, and they were sitting in a freezer, like a chest freezer. They're like, I made an ice bath. I plugged this thing in and filled it up with water. Done. I was like, holy crap. Actually, no. Before I saw that, I got one of those livestock trough feeders, the galvanized tubs. And then went on Craigslist and bought an ice machine. I used one for like $800, and I put them both outside and then proceeded to break the ice machine because I was in LA. It's 90 degrees, summer. Ice machine couldn't keep up. That sucked. Then I saw that Sears one, and then that would also have a hard time staying because it was out in the sun. It was behind my brother Cody's gym. And then I, put a timer on it and do all these things. And then I had my handyman build a case around it so it would be insulated, right? Kind of like your first ones. But the issue I found with that, and I still have with that, is that the water gets disgusting very fast. And I'm not trying to pour some bleach in my ice bath or something. It's bad enough just doing it with toxic tap water. So I really commend you guys for putting in the work to taking it past that point, because I know a lot of people do that, like me, because it's cheap, but not so much when you count the time it takes to empty the tub, clean it out, wasting tons of water, which I never feel good about, and then trying to fill it back up. And it's not like a long-term viable solution for someone like me that's that committed. So kudos to y'all. I want to ask you, Adrienne, about, and I want to get back to more of the mechanics too, because I just like geeking out on that, because you guys have done some very innovative things that solved a lot of the problems we used to face with these products. When I went and sat with you, even though it wasn't even a pre-planned ceremony of sorts where we had time to really like see your magic, I found it to be a really powerful experience because of the presence and mindfulness that you brought to the experience of cold exposure. People, I think publicly, when they think about ice baths, they think about like the ice bucket challenge or sports teams that are, just off the field and they get in, and they scream and, do all this theatrical expression. And I got in and you're like, ding. You start doing a full-on like sound healing on me in the bath. And I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting. And I went very quickly into that etheric sort of medicine space with you. And I was just like, okay, there's another level to this. Because I meditate when I get in there and it's just so grounding. But I've never actually had anyone else around that is creating a container. So I'd love to explore how you got into that integration.
Well, I think you nailed it when you said that most people meet the ice with this competitive kind of energy. You think, I got to get through this. I got to grin and bear it. And I'm going to like psych myself up and I'm going to high energy. And after explaining my very first ice bath to you, that makes a lot of sense because that's what I was thinking at the time too. Like I have to psych myself out to do this. And the issue I discovered, and this is at like maybe the third time I plunged, was I was standing in front of it and I was feeling this anxiety, like just fear of the ice. And I knew that once I was in and once I got out, I was going to feel really good. But there was something physically stopping me from stepping my foot in the water and I couldn't figure it out. And thank goodness. And this is why Tom's our business partner and CEO. Like he's standing there and he's like, Adrienne, what if you just stepped in? and then sat down. And as he's saying this and it's like resonating in my mind, I'm like, yeah, what if I did that? What if this was just my choice and I just took control and I understood that I was in control and all I had to do was get in and sit down? This could be the most passive form of healing modality therapy I could possibly find, right? And so I did. I stepped in, I sat down, I leaned back, I dropped my arms, and I breathed. And it was such a powerful experience to meet the cold that way, to meet the cold with mindful intention, to calm myself before getting in, because nothing had happened yet, right? When I'm standing outside of the tub, there isn't anything to be afraid of. There isn't anything touching me. I'm not feeling anything. There's no experience going on at that point. So if I can carry that mindfulness into this experience, then what could I do? And within that ice bath, I was just immediately transported to a place of meditated calm, transported to a place where I could control my breath through the hyperventilative response. And it was shortly after that I thought, there are things that I've learned along my years. Dialectical behavioral therapy, one of the things that they teach you for emotional regulation is to ground yourself by getting in touch with all 5 of your senses. And so now I was thinking, before I get into an ice bath, how can I ground myself? How can I get in touch with all 5 of my senses so that I'm fully grounded in a calm state of mind before going through this extreme experience? And it didn't come to me right away. Took a little bit of workshopping with some friends in Toronto, took some practice with some people at Arco Santi at their Convergence Festival of guiding other people through that experience. And it's basically me creating, like you said, a container, this safe space and container of calm groundedness before you ever step into the water. So if you can access that here, and then I'm there to help guide you while you're in there, like you can, your first ice bath can be so much more powerful and profound than my first ice bath. And by bringing in the sound bowls, that was really what kicked it up a notch for me, because you're in this metal tub and you've got the water and then the bowl just below the surface. So the sound is going all the way around you and it's penetrating deep into your body and it's distracting you on levels from what you're supposed to be afraid of. And it evolved from there. The guided meditation that I used prior to telling you to get into the water, I'm painting you a perfect picture, or I'm painting you an exact picture of what's going to happen, what you're going to do, so that when you are in that cold of water and it is your very first ice bath and you are experiencing fight or flight, my words come back to you. All I have to do is breathe. This is what cold feels like. And then you've got this beautiful sound and you've got the pretty lighting and you've got the smells all around you. You feel the cold. It's engaging all of your senses, and it's also teaching you that these are tools you can carry with you everywhere you go. Anytime you experience anxiety, anytime you experience fight or flight, anytime there's a big mountain that you think you have to climb, all you have to do is take it one step at a time. Put one foot in the water, put the next foot in the water, sit down without hesitation. Don't stand in your own way. Tell the story that you want to tell yourself before you ever even get in. Now, I teach it. I teach as a workshop. I hold sensory immersion experiences for my clients one-on-one, for couples, for team building, for events. And it is ceremony. It feels very magical to me. My practice with the cold is intentional and mindful and grounding and challenging. And I have all of these tools and tips and techniques that I use through the cold and elsewhere in life. It all just like came together. One thing after the other was like, all right, now I'm going to try this. And I'm going to do this. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to meet your fear.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I found that too, just the nervous system resilience after years of just getting in that bath and getting better at mind over matter, you know, where you get in. That's what I always try to tell people is like, what's making you freak out is literally your nervous system telling your brain that you're in danger. But you and they often forget that we have a pretty large degree of agency over that as awareness, right? Awareness trumps all of that, you know, kind of downstream stuff of the body and all of its precautionary measures and fears and all of that stuff. And to harness that in one area, it's like that thing, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, right? So how do you do a divorce? How do you do a lawsuit? How do you do your house burning down? How do you do a death in the family? You do it the same way as you do an ice bath. You know,
how do you deal with a flat tire? How do you how do you deal with emotional dysregulation? How do you deal with fear of your future? We get to put it in practice in the cold, and we get to carry that with us throughout our lives.
One thing about the experience with you that was not only new, but somehow just put pieces together was the sound bowls. And you kind of alluded to it, that the resonance of the metal in the tub and the resonance of the water crystals, it's as if you're inside of a speaker, right? It's just like, and I think that's why it got really kind of psychedelic there for a minute. I was like, I take ice baths just about every day. Like, cool, you're going to do some special things. Like, I love your energy. I'm like, oh, let's do it. But I wasn't like, well, get ready, Luke, you're going to go deep, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh shit. And it was just so cold. And I realized if I don't do the timer right on my homemade one, my Sears ice bath, it's probably like 40 sometimes, or maybe even gets up to 45. And I'm like, it feels cold, but that shit was cold, like on another level. So the combo of all of those things converging, I was just like, oh shit, these guys are onto some other voodoo here in the
Next
best
level.
way. Yeah.
Next level. Yeah. There were some big ice chunks in there floating around with you.
It was nice.
Move some around for you.
It was really nice. I just, if I could do it over again, I'm not someone that typically lives with regrets. I would not try to talk afterward. I would just savor it, because I was just meeting you, and when you get to know someone, you're building rapport, and like you want to be fully there for that. And I was just like,
I get to meet a lot of people that way.
I bet, right? You're like just another guy freaking out in the bath. Maybe either of you could speak to. You mentioned, physiological, biological benefits, emotional benefits, spiritual benefits. Either one of you that wants to weigh in on some of that, especially perhaps starting with some of the sciencey stuff. I was really digging deep with your partner Tom on some of this, and I'm sure you guys hang around him enough to be able to assimilate some of it. But he was telling me some shit I had never heard about hormones and testosterone and all kinds of next level stuff that was quantifiable, validated scientifically. It's not just like, oh, you feel good and you get tougher. Give me some of the juicy facts on cold immersion.
Yeah, it's easier to find something that it doesn't help with, which I don't know if that's true, because I'm not sure that I know of something that it doesn't help with. I'll tell you, one of my favorite systems to talk about is the vascular system. So, which is another reason why we really prefer those colder, freezing temperatures, because it gets that deeper vasomotor constrictive response. So, when I was working as a business analyst in a very small pharmaceutical company in Scottsdale, Arizona, and one of the products that the company marketed was for chronic venous insufficiency, and this is a very, very pesky disease of aging that we see in industrialized humans. And so, if you go to long-term care facilities, old folks' homes, nursing homes, things like that, you're going to find a lot of senior citizens that have very poor circulation, especially in their hands and their feet. They're always cold. They're always bundled up, and their hands and their feet are always very cold. This is early chronic venous insufficiency. And what it means is that over the course of our lives, we tend to live in these climate-controlled environments where even in a place like Minneapolis or something like that, where it gets very cold in the winter, you can really design your life to never really spend a whole lot of time in that. You can go from your home to your car to your place of work to your car to your home and never really experience that temperature volatility. Now, we're all evolved from earlier humans who walked barefoot and naked over glaciers tracking hooved animals. That's where our vascular systems adapted over those millions of years of evolution. And so they're adapted to constrict in the cold and to dilate in the heat. And it's a lot easier for us to dilate our vascular system. We can do it with warm exposure, with sauna, with hot tubs. We can do it with aerobic exercise, which raises our core body temperature, and our vascular systems dilate to adjust to that. There's really only one way to constrict the vascular system, and that's through deliberate cold exposure. And with this disease of aging, chronic venous insufficiency, when it gets past those early stages, it gets to a point where people can develop a condition called digital ulceritis. So ulcers will actually start to develop on the fingers and the toes. And what this is the vascular system is no longer healthy enough to supply enough blood to keep the tissue alive. So the tissue starts to basically die, from the extremities in. And right away, that's just a massive drop in quality of life. A person can no longer dress themselves. They can't do buttons. They can't hold forks and spoons. They can't feed themselves. And so when you've got these digital ulceritis, you become incapacitated. When it progresses from there, you can get into amputations. You can have fingers, hands, feet, lower legs actually amputated. And this is how a lot of people in our species and in our industrialized society are spending the last years of their physical life, is in these disease states of venous insufficiency and poor circulation and ulcers and amputations. And we all have to end our physical life at some point, but this is really not a great way to spend, the last few years. And so that's just one of them, and probably my favorite to talk about is that vasomotor constrictive response, which is developing stronger muscle tissue in the vascular system. That's also why we always coach people to keep your hands and your feet in. Even if you got to take them out for a second, everybody's hands and feet are very sensitive to the cold, and this is why, by the way. Keep them in. Even if you got to pull them out, keep them in, because you can train that pain in the extremities away after a certain amount of ice bathing. And it's just, I hope as I near the end of my physical life that I won't be
having to have
with
fingers removed. Because they're
And so that's one of them.
Man.
And we have anecdotal evidence. Tom and myself, we got our testosterones checked. I got mine a year and a half ago checked, and then I got it about half a year ago. So there's a 1 year gap in there, and it had raised. I'm 41 years old. I'll be 42 in October. And so I got it checked at 39. I got it checked at 40, got it checked at 41, and it actually raised like 30%.
Wow.
Tom's is even more. He's like 54 right now. He's got the testosterone of a 19-year-old.
Wow.
And it's like off the charts. And so that's very anecdotal. We've found some support in the scientific literature that cold exposure, even as light as just dressing down outside in like 50 degrees, like not putting on a coat, can help to reverse type 2 diabetes. So metabolic function, there's fat burning systems that it works on. There's mood regulation from the dopamine and norepinephrine boost that you get at about 30 seconds into an ice bath. Those feel-good chemicals, those natural anti-anxiety, antidepressant, anti-stress chemicals that we all keep in our brains get released. And that can have that kind of long-term lasting effect to reduce stress, reduce anxiety.
That's so weird that a hermetic stress, like getting really cold, causes your brain to release, if you can hang in, right? Because at first it's like adrenaline, I'm assuming. But if you can hang in past that 30 seconds to a minute, then it starts dumping all these happy chemicals into you, which is weird. I'm like, does the body think you're dying? So it's like, we're going to go out in style. At least he's going to be happy, you know?
It's interesting. And I don't really, I obviously I don't know, but the way that I tend to think about it is that from a physiological standpoint, this is not an abnormal situation for us to be in. Like I said, we're descended from earlier humans who were exposed to the elements. They were exposed to very cold temperatures, very hot temperatures, seasonality. They were migrating. They would migrate around, with the herds. And so, and like you said, a human falling into an icy river or something like that was probably not that uncommon. So over the adaptation and evolution of our physiology, these things were common. They're just not anymore. They're not, ever since the Industrial Revolution hit and the invention of air conditioning and refrigeration, which is interesting because I use the same technology to undo.
Right. You're using a domestic, innovation to undomesticate people.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And so over the last, 150 years or so, our species in the industrialized world has increasingly hidden from these volatilities, from these exposures that are a deep part of our physiology and our psychology, our mentality. And so it's interesting to think about, like, why does it hit us with that boost?
Because it's a reward, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what is the body and brain rewarding you for?
Finding your roots.
Right. It's like, ding, 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 you're on the spot. This is the natural human life way.
Yeah.
You just found it again. Congratulations.
Yeah.
We'll be right back at you after this brief but important announcement. This podcast would not be possible without our friends over at Just Thrive Health. And they've been with the show for quite a while now, and one of the sponsors that I feel most grateful and proud to support and present to you. In so doing, I rarely like to clown on competitive products. It's not really my style to say, oh, this brand is the best and the rest of them suck. But I must be honest, as someone who's tried to fix my gut in numerous ways, especially with a lot of very expensive probiotics over the years, I have to say that most probiotics I've ever tried were a complete waste of time, energy, and money, with the exception of the Just Thrive probiotic. What makes Just Thrive probiotics so special is that they're spore-based, and this allows them to survive the treacherous journey into your GI tract where they can make themselves at home and do what they're supposed to do. And for this reason, it's a really unique and incredible product. It's also something kids at just about any age can take. Parents can sprinkle it into the food or drinks of little ones. It can also be baked or fried up to 455 degrees and still retain 100% potency. Isn't that crazy? It's also ideal for pregnant moms-to-be to support a healthy microbiome for themselves and their babies. Newborns get their first big dose of microbes at birth while traveling through the birth canal. It also contains a very special strain of bacteria that can maintain its effectiveness when taken with antibiotics. Now, talk about crazy awesome. That's one of the issues when you're taking antibiotics, if you're in a position to have to do so, is that they're going to ultimately cause some dysbiosis, to say the least. I'm gonna put it politely there. So I'm one, again, who wasted so much money trying to take probiotics during a cycle of antibiotics, which is probably futile. However, it's not with Just Thrive spore-based probiotics. So if you want to check this out, I highly recommend that you do. So if you want to get your hands on some of these Just Thrive probiotics, here's what you do. Go to justthrivehealth.com/Luke. That's justthrivehealth.com/Luke. And of course, we've got a discount for you. It's 15%. And the code there is Luke15 at justthrivehealth.com. And now back to the interview. I tell people often that, people that have things like depression and anxiety, I don't know about clinical mental illness beyond that, but just your average neurotic person like we've all been at one point or another, always it's like breath work and ice baths. Like look what happened for you, right? You have all these autoimmune things going on. It's like you're trying everything. Sometimes it's like the most simple thing that really moves the needle. And I do this myself. Anytime I'm starting to get fight or flighty or just overworked, overwhelmed, I think this is where the term chill out comes from, Right. I'm like, I need to chill. No, I need to go deep chill. And I swear to God, I will run to that ice bath like nobody's business and come out. And I'm just like, what was the problem again? It's really insane how effective it is.
Yeah.
But it does require a certain fortitude in a person that it's harder than taking a pill, right? Like a lot of the good things. And even like when you start a breathwork session, for me, it's always kind of like the first couple reps working out. It's like, oh my God, why did I do this? This sucks. Couple minutes in, you get some momentum. And then next thing you know, you're like, I could do this forever. But it really is, I think, one of the most powerful ways to positively affect your mood. One question I do have on the physiology, and I don't know that you'll know the answer, but I'm just fascinated by this. Is I used to do like weight training, and then I didn't want to get sore and be smoked afterwards. So then I would do an ice bath, and it would shunt all the inflammation, and I would never get sore. And everyone else the next day would be like, "Oh my God, I'm so sore from that workout." I was like, "I'm not. I did an ice bath." And then I heard Dr. Rhonda Patrick talking about how if you want to build muscle, and let's face it, most people that are lifting weights want to build muscle for one reason or another, that you don't want to do an ice bath right afterward because the inflammation that is building the muscle is what you've shunted with the cold. So then I switched and I started doing it the other way around. And I am so much stronger and resilient right out of an ice bath than I ever could be if my body was warm. And so we're looking at the vasoconstriction that you described. I still don't understand why having less blood in your blood vessels makes you stronger. It makes no sense to me. Do you guys have any idea?
Yeah, this is something new that we've also come across. The finding that doing instead of using the cold to recover from the workout, using the workout to recover from the cold has a really awesome synergistic effect. In fact, for us, we stumbled across this just a few months ago. The first time we were out here in Austin was early January, and we did an open house event with ARX.
Right.
Who you know.
That's where I do my every Sunday Morozko plunge.
Yeah, absolutely. And so people were experiencing the ice bath with the Forge, and then they were going to do their ARX workout on the ARX, the adaptive resistance machines, which
is hard as F. Those listening, it's like way gnarlier than any weights you've ever touched in your life. By far. Yeah. It's a robot that's fighting you. It's insane.
Absolutely. Well, you're only fighting yourself. It tricks you into thinking that it's a robot.
Okay. Yes, I'll take that.
And one of the great things about those machines is how it tracks and keeps track of your data over a series of sessions. And so I can log into any ARX machine in the country, and it's got all of my record, my data there, and it'll show like progress and things like that. And a couple of people noticed that there was just like a huge boost in their strength, like 15-20% over their last session, if they were getting out of the Forge and going into the ARX machine. And that now ARX has their Forge, and so they've gotten a lot more data points, and it's becoming less anecdotal, and now this set of data
that's true.
Like Mike at ARX, it's like everybody who comes in here who does the Forge first and goes to the ARX, they runs back to me like, I'm so much stronger. I'm like 10, 15, 20% over my last session.
That's been my experience.
Yeah. And so, we haven't really dug in on like why would less blood flow equate to more strength, or what the mechanism is. But yeah, it seems to be supported, and we don't really understand yet.
Yeah, you're just like, it works, do it.
Yeah.
But another thing about it is not only that you're stronger, but you're just so much more resilient. It's like, I'm not tired. If you go lift heavy weights after a few reps, and like, obviously I'm not a huge weightlifter, but I try to get it in a couple days a week, but you're like, you're smoked, and the last one, you're like, it's just not like that. It's weird. It's kind of just, I don't want to say easy the whole way through, but you recover super fast. If you do, like one time through the ARX, I'm already ready to go again before the timer's even telling me it's time to go again. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, let's do this. It's just bizarre.
Maybe it is just those feel-good chemicals still sitting on your brain. And so, you're not psyching yourself out. You're not, I can't remember who said it, but, somebody who was like a mountain climber or something like that. He says, the same place I quit on the mountain is the same place I quit at the boardroom. And I realized it's not the mountain, it's me. I'm the one who hits the limit.
Yeah.
And so maybe sitting on those feel good chemicals, you're just like, I'm going for I'm stronger than I thought I was, or
right.
I don't have those alarm bells going off, or those like stress states going off. Maybe it's as simple as that.
That makes sense. Yeah. In terms of the psycho-spiritual and emotional changes that have taken place, what have you noticed in yourself, Adrienne, in terms of your growth after having added this to your practice, and then the people that you're coaching? I mean, like I said, the experience I had with you was so powerful. I can imagine if you're working with people on a regular basis, they must be having some pretty profound transformation take place.
Yeah, I think the emotional resilience is part of what kept me coming back for more. Like I said, I'd done dialectical behavioral therapy. I was in therapy for more than a decade. And growing up, I was raised by a man, my dad, who is bipolar schizophrenic. And so I carried a lot of those mimicked behaviors into adulthood for coping mechanisms, right? And they're not effective. They don't get us where we want to go. It's not about meeting your emotion in a state of calm or resolving issues in a state of calm. And one of the things that this practice has taught me, and this is why I need it to be 32, 33 degrees, is because activating fight or flight intentionally, teaching yourself how to pause and breathe in that moment versus becoming reactionary, you carry that throughout your life. So, a year ago, if somebody, or 3 years ago, if somebody were to cut me off in traffic, it'd be like F-bomb this and laying on the horn and freaking out. And now I just take this pause of like, I've done that before. I've cut somebody off in traffic before. Oh, right. I wonder if that's a teenager learning to drive. There's this pause that you create. And I'll bring up Scott again. He talks about it in his book. He calls it The Wedge. And then his subsequent book after, What Doesn't Kill Us, The Wedge. It's that pause that you're creating between whatever the thing is that's happening in life and then your reaction to it. And the biggest example that I had, and this is still in our prototype stages, this is still very new in our practice, and we still had our very first Forge prototype, but we had our regular ice bath. And I was arguing with Jason about something. Pick a thing. And I was crying and I couldn't get my thoughts. Like your thoughts become slippery when you're in that emotionally dysregulated state. And I'm trying to explain what it is I'm so upset about, but I can't even figure it out because I'm so upset. And I'm just sobbing. And inside of my head, I'm like, just stand up and get out of this physical spot that you're in. Because if you can change your physical state, you can change your mental and emotional state. And in my head, I'm saying it over and over again. Just stand up, just stand up, just stand up. And all of a sudden it was like my light bulb aha moment. It said, stand up, walk across the yard and sit in the water. Like it was like a vision, like a full on meditative vision. And it came to me like 100 tons of bricks, just like stand up, walk across the yard and sit in the ice bath. And I did. And I was in there for about 4 or 5 minutes. And at this point, it was definitely one of my longest ice baths. And then I got out and I went over and I sat next to Jason and I said, I don't remember what I was upset about. What I do know is it's more important for me to forget about it and move on and enjoy the rest of our evening. I said, will you do that with me? Of course, Jason's like, heck yeah, I'll do that with you. Like, oh, I don't even know what you were upset about either. So yeah, we'll do that. And that was such a profound experience for me, because never in my life have I had a tool where I could push that button and stop that emotionally dysregulated state. And that emotionally dysregulated state was a go-to for me. It was the default. And so as I'm coaching people, and I coach people who have recovered from substance abuse, people who suffer PTSD, people who do suffer depression and anxiety and psychosis. And one thing that I'm seeing consistently is that the more consistent you are in your deliberate cold exposure practice, the easier these emotional coping mechanisms are to put into place. So now it's easier for me to stay calm even when I am emotionally dysregulated. I can recognize it as an emotion. I say, okay, I'm feeling fear. Okay, I'm feeling sadness. Okay, I'm feeling anger. Okay, I'm feeling, insecurity or jealousy. Like I can see it for what it is and I can still feel the emotion, but I have that space in between where I can reflect and at least be open to hearing what else is going on around me. Okay, who is the most emotionally regulated person in the room and what can you share with me about what you're seeing that I don't right now? I would have never been able to have that conversation before ice baths, before practicing deliberate cold exposure. It just wouldn't have happened. And I think that is also what has led to my healing. I had to heal parts of me here and parts of me here in order for my body to say, okay, you're creating this environment for me. You're creating this healing state and environment for me to bloom in, for me to be my best self. And that is part of what I use when I'm coaching my clients. Like we talk about, what are you working on? What is the hardest thing for you right now? What is standing in your way? In what ways are you standing in your way? And how can we break that down? How can we focus that as the intention as you move through this fight or flight response and this difficulty of an ice bath, and then come out on the other side feeling empowered and calm and clarity of mind and soundness of heart and spirit. And I think that's also why this feels, a session with me feels like such a ceremony, because it's all encompassing. It isn't just sitting down in cold water and then getting through it. It's all of it. It's mental, it's emotional, it's physical, spiritual. And you've got someone there. You're not alone. You're not alone. I know exactly what it's like to be sick. I know exactly what it's like to be tired. I know what it's like to be emotionally dysregulated. And I'm here to say that we have natural healing, passive forms of modalities that we can use to build that up.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
It's funny that I didn't ask you this in the beginning, but what does Morozko Forge mean? A, and B, what is the Morozko method, which I have a feeling you just described, but if there's any more to add to that. But I love the name, even though I still can't quite pronounce it right, but I'm part Russian, so I should be able to. But I love the origin story, the fable that you shared with me earlier on, so if you could share that. Yeah,
so Morozko, which is the way I pronounce it, I haven't really heard very many
Russians, write in and tell us.
Yeah.
Morozko. Sounds right.
Yeah. I just try to say it with a Russian accent. Morozko.
There you go.
It's a fairy tale from the Russian tradition. And Morozko is a Jack Frost or Father Winter type character. And the fairy tale that's attached to that mythology is it's a wicked stepmother fairy tale. So there's a beautiful little girl. She lives in the forest with her father and her wicked stepmother and her nasty stepsister. The stepmother and the stepsister, they don't like the little girl very much. They're very jealous of her. And so the stepmother gets the father to take the girl out into the middle of the forest and leave her there. So it's got a little bit of a Hansel and Gretel kind of theme to it as well. And for some reason he does this. He takes the little girl out in the middle of the forest and he leaves her there. And Morozko, Jack Frost, Father Winter, he's going around the forest and he's freezing things because that's what he does. He brings the cold, he brings the freeze to the forest in the winter. And he comes upon the little girl. She's sitting there. She's shivering. She's freezing to death. And he's about to freeze her, but he stops first and he says, "Child, are you warm?" And the little girl answers him with stoicism and grace and says, "Yes, dear Morozko, I am warm enough." And so he doesn't freeze her, and he's very impressed with her. And so he takes her into his cottage. He gives her all these jewels, all these gifts, makes her a princess of the forest. And somehow the stepmother catches wind of this, that not only is the little girl not dead, but Morozko has made her a princess of the forest, given her jewels, given her presents. And so she says, "I know what I'll do. I'll recreate this. I'll take my own daughter, leave her in the middle of the forest. Morozko will find her. We'll take her into his cottage, give her all these jewels, all these presents, and make her a princess." So she does this. And the stepsister's sitting in the middle of the forest, and Morozko finds her and says, "Child, are you warm?" But this little girl is not stoic. She's not gracious. And so she kind of mouths off to him. And so he freezes her. And what was probably a story that was told to children in the Russian forest to get them to not complain about the brutal winters, we take from it that if you meet the cold with stoicism and grace, it will bestow great gifts upon you. And
Cool.
The forge element is, forge has a couple of different connotations. We can forge ahead in our lives. We can forge, through a forest. We can, forge through a river. It's also a place where iron is turned into steel. So you think about like a metal forge, where you can take iron in and you put it through this stressful pounding process. You heat it up. You add other minerals and elements to it, and pound on it, and it becomes stronger. Steel becomes stronger than the iron that it started out as. And so it's a little bit of a play on words there as well, because even though we're going through the cold, this is another reason why we like those really cold temperatures, those freezing temperatures, because it is a hormetic stress process. We're taking something, we're stressing our bodies to turn it into something stronger than it was before, something more healed, more resilient, through this anti-fragile process. And so we take those two words together, and that's where we get the Morozko
I like it.
Forge.
It's a great name.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to the Morozko method other than the kind of emotional part you described? Is there anything missing from there that you guys want to share?
Yeah. So there's a lot that I think goes into it. And again, we chose a mythological name. We found a mythology that resonated with us because we believe that our lives are the product of the story that we tell ourselves. And so we can tell ourselves lots of stories about why we do things, about what our relationships are. We can tell ourselves stories of victimhood. We can tell ourselves stories of heroism. We can tell ourselves stories of sacrifice. We can tell ourselves stories of love, whatever. This is how we as humans kind of develop our perception of reality, and we all are sitting on subjective perceptions of reality. And this was something that I think we were working with before we even found the cold. It might have been something that kind of led us to the cold, is that storytelling and telling ourselves the right stories about who we are and where we're going and how we're growing. And, if we're wronged or something, by society, by other people, we can tell ourselves the right stories to get us through that and to keep us on a growth process. So storytelling is a part of the Morozko method. And then, diet and nutrition is a part of the Morozko method. Fasting, is a part of the Morozko method. The language that we use a lot of language hacks, especially at the studio in Phoenix, to, again, put us on pathways to progress and growth. And, so all of that kind of wraps into what we call the Morozko method. And I think, as we get further into this project, finding ways to broadcast those other things and to talk about those other things that we do that we really feel as a part of that method is going to be important for us.
That's cool. Yeah. It's neat that you guys have married like a physical product that's very useful and that the market for it is really in need of, but also a practice and a lifestyle around it. You know what I mean? Because then it's like you have something tangible to anchor people. There's something to actually do instead of just, oh, cool, talk to me about empowering language. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, I don't know, it depends on how you're wired, but some people want something more tangible, less tangible. And I think it's really cool. Do you guys have some kind of training programs around this method?
Yes. And
like, are there or will there be certified coaches if someone's like, damn, these guys are onto some cool stuff, I want to learn all this, but there's only so many people that can meet or work with either of you?
Yeah, Adrienne has trained a lot of the cold coaches, and I think getting deeper into that, especially with the language hacks and the mentality of it, I think is something that we'll do in the future.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think of Wim Hof, and it's like he stumbled across these practices and kind of created a model, and then once you have the model, then that model can be passed on to someone else, and as long as they follow it to a high enough degree to keep it intact in terms of integrity, then it's something that could keep growing. It's super cool. I feel like you guys are on the sort of the precipice of a really unique offering here. And obviously, like if you get an ice bath from you guys, it's going to cost a few bucks. They're quite sophisticated, and I want to talk about again some of the innovations there. But even for people that aren't so situated at this time to be able to drop a few grand on a really fancy ice bath, like it's not that hard to find freezing water somewhere if you really set your mind to it. So I like that, you guys are in a business that is offering something for sale, but also the mindset piece and just the practices that one can learn and then take with them and not have to be burdened by having to necessarily buy a device or something.
Yeah, the Morozko method I do also teach as a training course. So I do certify coaches to create a sensory immersive experience the way that I do.
Oh, cool.
I would love to eventually see not only those coaches, but anyone come up with other ways to guide people through this process. That the benefit is with a guide, your first experience can be a really rad experience, and that can encourage you to continue the practice. And I do have some deliberate cold exposure meditations online on the Morozko method online and on our YouTube channel. So even if you're just getting started in the practice and you just want an ear, or just want a voice there to help you go through the steps, you can do that. And I do have practicing certified Morozko method coaches, and that's something that continues to evolve. But like Jason said, it's a lifestyle. The Morozko method is a lifestyle. It's a way of wellness, living in wellness.
That's dope. Wow, I love it, you guys. Tell me a little bit about the construction of these baths, because as I said, coming from the primitive beginnings of my iterations and the ones that you described on the way, like you guys have arrived at something that is super beautiful looking and very effective. And one of the things you did that I think is so cool is that you introduced ozone as a disinfectant. That is one of the problems, and probably one of the things that would prevent a germaphobe from getting in an ice bath that 10 other people just got in, right? Especially sweaty people.
Yeah.
So give me the breakdown on the ozone, and then also how you made it somehow make ice, but not freeze over on top. Because if I get mine cold enough, it's like 5 inches of ice. Then I take a kettlebell to break it and break through the wall of it. And it's just a train wreck. So you guys like fine-tuned a lot of very cool details here.
Yeah. So the ozone disinfection system that we developed is probably one of our more powerful innovations. It allowed us to the earlier models, the first models were refrigeration only, and we had really kind of set this out to be a backyard product, which is where we saw that there was a need. And then we were challenged by Optimize. Actually, they were opening their space, and they're like, "Well, we want to put this in a business." And we're like, well, that's an interesting concept.
Wow.
And so now we've got county health assessors to appease, and we looked, and there's no regulations out there pertaining to a commercial cold bath. And if you call the health inspector, like, hey, we have this ice tub that people are getting into, they're like, you have a what that people are doing what now? They just don't know how to handle it. So we used some of the regulations out there for like hot tubs and like public pools and baths and things like that, and innovated the ozone disinfection system. And again, I know I keep saying this, but it's true. Here's another reason why we like the lower temperatures. Really, really cold water, like freezing cold water, it's naturally averse to microbial infection. So bacteria and viruses, they don't like cold water. They love hot water, which is why a jacuzzi or something like that has to be, super chlorinated. And an ozone generating unit in a hot tub is not enough to keep a hot tub completely disinfected. It'll only reduce the amount of caustic chemicals that have to go into it. So right off the bat, those really cold temperatures they stay clean naturally, which makes the ozone generation such an elegant way to get it to that pure disinfected state. And one of the great things about ozone is that it doesn't hang out in the water. So you inject the water with it. There's bubbles of ozone in there. It obliterates anything that is that is contaminated or microbial or anything like that. And then the ozone bubbles rise to the top of the bath. They pop. They release to the environment, and then poof, you're left with absolutely pure, crystal clear water with no chlorine, no hydrogen peroxide is needed, and so that's
I've tried the I think it's like 30% food grade hydrogen peroxide in my ice bath. It doesn't work anyway.
Yeah.
Did you ever try that?
We didn't. I think we were working with. We tried like a quarter cup of chlorine bleach in our earlier refrigeration, like in our Forge 1, just to kind of, because we're playing with like, okay, how long can we keep this? Obviously, we have to drain it out at some point and start over with a fresh batch of water. And so we're like, okay, well, what if we put like a quarter cup of bleach in there, and that lasts a little while longer, but now you've got this chemical in there.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, and so really, dialing in that ozone generation and making sure that it was built in a way to get enough contact between the ozone and the water to produce this super clarifying effect without the need of chemicals was
right.
Really
it
special.
Comes out at the very bottom, and it has kind of a little diffuser type thing that seems like bubbles it into the water, right?
No, you're thinking that's the intake. So that's our inlet strainer that helps. It keeps like your towel lint in your hair from. On the other side, but you do see it does kind of look like a diffused effect because of just the way that the water is being injected with the ozone gas.
Got it.
I'm not going to tell everybody my secrets, but
No, anything proprietary, feel free to be vague on. I totally get it. There's 10 guys out there. Like, can you send me the blueprint? How do you do that? I'll make an ice bath company.
Right.
Heard that before.
Yeah, they're out there. But making sure that the water is injected with the ozone in a way that is sufficient enough to get that disinfecting effect was a really powerful innovation of ours. Which now those are probably our most popular, even for personal and commercial use, is the filtered and ozone disinfected units because they are so low maintenance. They're great in businesses, which I think about access a lot, which you touched on. It's a higher end product, and I don't like the feeling of pricing people out of a powerful therapy. And some of the most painful conversations we've had have been with people who have reached out to us and been like, I'm hurting. I'm ill. I have this condition, this thing that I'm working on, and I can't afford this. Is there anything you can do? And as a small, struggling company, we don't have 100 of them on the shelf. We build them in that studio in Phoenix, Arizona. They're not built in China or Vietnam. And we're not making them for 10 times less than we're selling them for. Our margins on these are very modest, and they keep us going. And so I think about access, about how can we open up access to this therapy, and which is why I love the business model, why I love being able to put one of these in a wellness studio, a gym, a place where someone can go and for $20, $30, $40, they can experience this therapy and they can get that benefit. And one of our big projects right now is how do we get more of them in those businesses throughout different cities and different areas.
Yeah, I think
we have a handful, and when people reach out to us like this, we're like, well, where are you located? Maybe we have a place where you can go.
I think that is the way of the future with all of this stuff that is high ticket item. The biochargers, $15,000, the amp coils. I think like $8 or $9,000, like all the heavy hitting Juve red light therapy. I mean, some of these things are just out of people's financial capacity. But I think if most people were able to make a couple sacrifices, they could find a way to get a monthly pass or even a day pass for a place like Optimize and go in and just like hammer it out and do a circuit of so many powerful modalities at once and not have to have it at home and not have to pay for it. So I think that's a really cool thing. And the ozone allows that to be possible because the water isn't all stank for a bunch of other fools getting in there before you.
And there isn't a gallon of chlorine in it, which causes
the water is
problems.
pristine. When I go to the ARX tub, I mean, I'm watching sweaty people get in and out of that thing before me, and I get skeeved out mentally, and then I'm like, whatever. I get in and I'm like, this is pristine. I mean, you smell like a little bit of ozone, which is actually just smells like cleanliness. It's like after a lightning storm, that like
that electricity,
that fresh air smell.
Yeah, that fresh after rain smell.
I love that smell. So
that's how ozone is created, by the way. There's an arc of electricity in the generator that creates the heavy oxygen molecules. So when you smell that after a lightning storm, it really is ozone.
Right. That's so cool. Do you guys
like what?
I didn't know that.
Well, it's funny, the biocharger. I don't know if you guys have seen one of those.
Yeah, I love that
this
thing.
Tesla coil, and it has a man. I wish I was moved into my house. You guys could come use it. It's in the garage, just sitting there, sadly. But it has this copper arc rod on top, and when you run it, there's so much energy going through that coil that it creates little lightning bolts. And then there's like a little ozone in the air. You can smell it. Like, it smells clean in here. It's wild. What about filtration? Are you guys doing anything to remove all the junk out of the tap water that people are using to go into it?
There's a micron filter in there. I don't know that it's of the grade where it would be removing things that are in the tap water. It's more about particulates,
like sediment and stuff like that.
Things like that. That's an interesting concept. We might look into what are some of the minerals and metals in tap water and how we might remove those, because I sense
a 2.0 version.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing: is like, you got to choose your battles. I'm just a perfectionist, so and I'm just a control freak sometimes. So I want everything to be totally sewn up. But here's the thing: like, how long are you going to sit in an ice bath? Honestly, right?
2 to 5 minutes.
So it's like, I don't know, go swimming, take a shower, whatever. Not to mention, you're not getting any vaporized water from an ice bath, where you're taking maybe a 15-minute shower every morning and breathing in all the chloramine and all this crap.
Right. Yeah.
So that said, I don't know if it would be the lowest hanging fruit if I was the producer of them.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to really nitpick and fine tune it, is another selling point perhaps for some. What I did with my homemade one is I got one of these chlorine filter tubes that you screw on your garden hose, which is just made to make your plants live longer and prosper. So I fill mine up with that, and it helps a little bit. But again, like, I'm not in there all that long.
Sure.
So it's whatevs.
Yeah. With the ozone disinfection and filtration system, really, if a person wanted to invest in a few cases of their favorite pure water.
Oh, that's funny, dude.
Dump that in.
You could take a spring water ice bath.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Never having to drain it and start over again. You just would add a little more as...
I like this thread. I like this. Because you could get, some untouched...
5-gallon spring water bottles.
Man. Yeah. I'm looking for springs here in
about
Texas.
10 of those.
For real. On that note, with the ozone system, you never have to change the water? Or is it like every few months you change it, or kind of like really never?
Really never, unless there was some sort of, I'll say, special contamination, some party fouls in it. But
somebody had too much MCT oil that morning. Don't shard in the ice bath, folks.
Don't pee in the pool. Unless there was some sort of special contamination like that, you should really never need to completely change out the water. For our business customers who do high volumes, they tend to choose to on their own, their own schedule, whether it's once a month or once a year or something like that. But if all is functioning as I designed it to, you really never should have to dump it out.
That's so cool. And not wasting so much water. Like I said, I always feel bad when I empty mine out. I'm just like, God, this sucks. I mean, I guess one could say there's an infinite amount of water, but maybe there's not. The other thing I think that was interesting about your bath is the ability to make it super freezing and actually make ice, but it doesn't make a film of ice on the top that you have to break through every time you get in, which gets to be a real pain in the ass. And like sometimes I'll break the film on mine, which I say film, and it could be like 3 or 4 inches thick. But then if I don't get it around the edges, then it like scratch you when you get in, and it sucks. So how did you make it not suck?
Well, ours makes ice along the bottom.
Okay.
So it'll develop a sheet of ice along the bottom, and then we've designed it so that once it reaches down to a certain temperature, the refrigeration system kicks off. There's a very small warming element in there. Not really much to raise the water temperature, but enough to detach that ice, and it floats to the top. And then, like you say, you take the kettlebell or the mace and you break it up.
But it doesn't seem like it all gets stuck to the sides. Like
it
mine.
Doesn't. No.
Yeah, it's just floating in the middle there, which is ideal. Because I really like there to be ice in there too.
Oh, yes.
I think we were talking about that.
I absolutely love the big. I want 2 to 3 inches thick. I want them big, the size of like basketballs. It's part of it is that gravity weight, like gravity blanket feel, like you feel like it's pressing in on you. So it's kind of like a cold hug. And then the clinking and then seeing the ice, like it readies my brain for the experience. It's like, it can be 33 degrees. It can be 32.8 and not have a lick of ice in it. But I don't feel the same as when I get to be in there with my chunks.
That's so true.
Like my chunks are my friends.
That's true. Not the chunks aforementioned.
Right.
Leaving
good, clean ozone-generated ice chunks.
Wow. Yeah, that's really true about that feeling of the weighted blanket.
Yeah.
Right? There is a different sensory experience. I never thought about that. That's so interesting. I just know I prefer it, and it's really hard to dial in if you don't have the right gear, you know? So that's interesting. So you achieved the perfect hot-cold balance. In terms of each of your favorite temperature, do you have like one temperature that you like or that you try to keep the baths to maintain?
The colder the better for me. So I do like it, that 32, 33 degrees. Again, for that vasomotor constrictive response. Sometimes I'll get into one that's like 40, 45, and I'll hang out for a while, and it's nice and it's refreshing, especially when it's 125 degrees in Phoenix, and that feels really good. But if I'm really trying to forge myself, if I'm really trying to stress myself into a stronger material, then 30, 33, between 32 and 33. And any colder than that, it's just a frozen block of water.
Physics tends to work that way.
Yeah, which is actually really that's really good because the other cold option out there is the cryotherapy, right? It's super,
I wanted to ask about that.
So that's super, super cold, super dry gas. You see those big negative numbers. It was negative 200 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. That can harm you. That has the potential of harming you. That's why you've got to wear the things on your hands, your feet. You have to cover up those sensitive parts, those parts that really need that cold therapy the most. Because you can actually get yourself frostbite. There's I think he was an NFL player, who got frostbite on one of his feet in a cryotherapy chamber and actually lost a chunk of tissue, had to be amputated off. And
damn.
That's the end of your NFL career. And so there's the potential in a cryotherapy chamber that uses those super dry, super cold gases to harm someone. The cold water can't do that. It's not cold enough. Even though the thermodynamic properties of water will give you a deeper and kind of a more uncomfortable, but a deeper therapy in a shorter amount of time, it doesn't have the ability to harm you. Really, the only negative outcome, there's 2 potential negative outcomes of deliberate cold exposure in water. One of them, it doesn't even happen very often, is called chilblains, which is almost just like a sunburn, but it's a cold burn. And some people get this. I've only heard of a few people getting this after doing ice baths several days in a row. The other one is hypothermia. So hypothermia is a drop in core body temperature that can be very dangerous for us, and it can actually kill you. But hypothermia takes a long time to kick in. You would really have to be in there for like 20 minutes, and you would be shivering uncontrolled. All of the alarm bells, the real alarm bells that are set into our mind and in our biology would be going off for like 5-10 minutes. Like you would just be uncontrollably shivering, and everything in your being would be like, get the hell out of here. And then as long as you're able to go into a warmer environment, as long as it's not freezing in the room that you get out of the forge or the outside that you get out and into, as long as you're able to bring that temperature back up, you're going to be okay. And that's just not the case with the cryotherapy, with the super cold, super dry gases. They just have that potential of harming a person very quickly.
And then you don't get the benefit of putting your hands and your feet in, right?
You've got to cover the parts of you that need that therapy the most.
Yes. I like me some cryotherapy. It's fast and refreshing, but it by no means has the same effect as getting in water.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get in really cold water, it's to the bone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just like, woo, my skin's tingly.
Yeah.
It's like, my femur is tingly on the inside of the marrow.
My arm hair is bright white. Yeah, now it's
and then what about duration? How long is the right time or your preferred time to get in?
I'm on average 3 to 5 minutes, and it depends on what I'm working on, but I try not to focus on time. So one of the things I do, I like to know how long I'm in there, but I'll set my phone out of sight. I push the stopwatch, I immediately get in. And then I trust my body. And when my body says it's time to get out, I say, no, it's not. We're going to wait a little longer. And I swear it's almost always 3 minutes and 34 seconds.
Oh, wow.
It's like my body just, even when I'm like, nah, I'm going to push a little longer. Nah, I'm going to push a little longer. And then I get out, it's like 3:34 every time. But there are times when I'm working on things, or, like if I start to experience some leg or joint pain, I'll do 6 or 7 minutes. Just depends on what I'm working on,
Yeah.
It depends on how many ice baths have I had that day? How many have I had that week? Because all of those things can be factors as well.
Are there times when you do more than one a day?
Oh, yeah. Especially in Phoenix in the summertime. We just moved into our commercial facility in November. And prior to that, us and our team, we were working outside, 120, 125 in our backyard. We would go throughout the day. You start your day, you do it before lunch, you do it after lunch, you do it before dinner, you do it after dinner. So you could do 3, 4, 5 in a day, no problem. As long as your body continues to warm itself up, there isn't really like a limit.
Yeah. I'm probably in LA when I was at home and it was warm out, I'd probably do 2, sometimes 3 a day. Yeah. Especially anytime I start to get sort of groggy and brain fog vibes. Like before interviews, I love doing an ice bath. I'm just like my best self,
just tuned
super
in.
on point. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Then what's your duration? Around the same 3 to 5 minutes?
2 to 5 minutes. When I was first getting into the practice, I'd gone as much as 10 to 15. I was really kind of pushing myself at those like freezing temperatures. Yeah. And then there was one day I did 30 or 35 minutes, but it was warmer. It was like between 40 and 45.
Yeah.
And that was, I knew somebody was going to do that. I think that by this point we had decided we were going to make a product, and I'm like, I knew somebody was going to do that, and I wanted that first somebody to be me, so I could really see like what's going to happen if somebody gets in here and just tries to, matcha themselves into half an hour. And that recovery was tough. It was painful.
Yeah.
But again, going back to the difference between discomfort and harm, like I was not harmed.
Yeah.
And so that was important to me to push it to that, at least that one time.
I did one of those too, about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know how cold it was, but it was on the colder side. And my teeth were chattering. I was like, okay, I think I've proved to myself I can do this one time.
Yeah.
No, I think this around 5 minutes for me, I think is usually when I feel complete, But then again, mine hasn't been as cold. Now that I went in y'all's, see, I'm from Texas now.
You're acclimating.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we've been there, 5 hours and I've already said it 3 times.
Yeah. But after I did, not that I haven't done cold ones at home, but I don't know. There's just something about that was different. I don't know. It was just hella cold. And I was like, I probably stayed in there, 5 minutes maybe? Or?
No, you were in there over 6 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was your second ice bath that day. So I want to credit you for that. Like
That's true.
You have
It had been like 2 hours before that I did your bath over at Optimize. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the same with you. Sometimes I'll set a timer. And often I just forget. But I can just kind of feel when it's been around 5 minutes. That usually seems like the sweet spot. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to cover with you guys while I have you so I don't regret it later.
I wanted to tell you about Epsom salts in the ice bath.
What?
Yeah, magnesium.
You can do that?
Yeah.
Jason, tell them all about it.
I thought you would rust the metal.
No. No. We've and we have an article up on our website. If you go to the journal link, where all of our articles are, and we've Tom has done some work here with magnesium, and because Epsom salt isn't salt, it's magnesium,
right?
And so it can absorb transdermally. In fact, we were just listening to your podcast with Ian Clark.
Oh yeah,
about like the spray.
I love the activation.
Love that stuff.
What's it called? Mag ease or something? Yeah, that shit's amazing.
And so putting the Epsom salts into the Forge, we are finding there's some good way of soaking in that magnesium transdermally. And the article, there's something in that article that Tom did about how it just gets into where it needs to get into better transdermally than it does like orally or anything like that.
That's so cool. You can also get the magnesium flakes too. I mean, they're much more expensive, but it's incredible stuff. A friend of mine was doing that with the homemade ice bath like I have, which is like metal inside, but it's probably aluminum or some cheesy metal. And he oxidized and basically rusted the whole thing, and it got holes in it. So I was like, note to self, don't do that. But yours is thick like stainless steel.
The one you were in was stainless steel. We do make them in their zinc dip galvanized steel.
Oh, okay, right.
Which kind of tends to get like a patina on it over time.
But it doesn't get holes in it. So
not
far?
Yet. I mean, new company, new products.
Yeah. We'll find out. No promises.
You got a warranty.
The first ones in the market are just now becoming a little over 2 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, the R&D process, right, of seeing what lasts and what doesn't, you start to find out. But that's very cool because I love doing the Epsom salt, magnesium flake baths and stuff. And I just thought until recently, I forget one of my interviews, someone was telling me, I think it was about like it was about water filtration. And I was under the impression that you only absorb water and the chemicals in the water in your skin if it's warm water, because it was like open your pores. And whoever it was, I forget, maybe it was Robert Slovak or one of the water experts, and they were like, oh no, it doesn't matter the temperature of the water. Water goes into your skin. Your skin's permeable. So that's cool that you could do the magnesium in there and still get it, even though it's not like a hot bath. You know?
Absolutely.
Shit, that's badass. Is there anything else I missed?
The salts do take a little longer to dissolve. Right, so keep that in mind when you're sitting down on the bottom. Right. Yeah. And even our zinc dipped galvanized tubs, the zinc is in the water. And we found that there are benefits to that as well. Like it just makes your skin really soft. And
cool.
Zinc is supposed to help with mood stability as well. So haven't done like any scientific research on it yet. Yeah. Again, it's just pretty much anecdotal of these are the experiences we've had.
That's cool. Well, it makes sense when you go in a hot spring, right? And the hot spring, each hot spring has its own unique profile of minerals. Some have a bunch of lithium, some have a bunch of silica, et cetera. And they do have unique properties, right? The ancient peoples that use these for healing weren't superstitious. Like they knew, go to that one over there and it makes you happy. That one relaxes you. That one makes your back not hurt. You know? Yeah, that's very cool. Well, I think that's it, you guys.
All right.
Let me just check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. No, I think we got it. That's my second one today. I didn't even have to look at my notes and I got everything done.
Nice.
Yay, Brain.
Well done.
Thank you, Brain. Really, a pleasure to meet both of you. I'm so glad that, it was in the divine plan that I just got kind of stuck in Phoenix and got to come meet you guys in person, because I've really been shopping around for an ice bath and also just finding a company to work with that I dig. And like, I would just be friends with you guys if you were just two people that liked cold water, you know what I mean? So it's fun to get to know you. And I'm, just such a supporter of your mission. You're doing something really great for the world. And
thanks so much.
Yeah, it's really, really great to chat with y'all.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. We finally did the deep dive on cold therapy. And that reminds me, I'm in this apartment here at the moment in Austin, Texas, where my lovely fiance Allison and I are temporarily living while we're doing some work on our new home. And my Morozko Forge is over at the house. And I got to say, I really noticed that I was unable to get over there and spend my 3 minutes today. And when I'm done recording here, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to head over there and take a dive in that ice water. And one of the things that I've really been appreciating about this particular bath, actually, is the fact that it does make ice. And it's really the only one on the market that does make ice. Now, when I used to have my homemade ghetto sort of Sears chest freezer, it would make ice, but it was incredibly difficult to gauge how much ice. And it was also, at times, a huge pain in the ass to break up the ice in order to get in it. It would leave this sort of sharp edge blade of ice around the edges, and you had to be very careful when you got in, etc. Now, it was cheap. I mean, I probably spent $500 to $800 putting the whole thing together, but it did come at a cost in terms of convenience and probably safety too, for that matter. So the Morozko, man, is really winning my heart over. And I've been having a great time getting in that thing just about every day, especially as it gets hot and humid here at Texas, man. When I'm over there working on the house, I'll jump in there 2 or 3 times a day. It's just badass. And I found a little trick, and I forget if we mentioned this in the episode, but I put a whole bag of Epsom salt at the suggestion of Jason in order to get some, a magnesium sulfate therapy while I'm in there, right? Everyone knows about a good Epsom salt bath. But he also said it would make the ice softer. And I thought, oh, that's weird. Let me give it a try. And I'll be damned, it does. So my ice in the Morozko, even though they're pretty substantial chunks that form on the bottom and then float up, it's super easy to break up. It's not slushy like a Slurpee, but it's, I don't know how to describe it. It's a softer ice. It's almost like snow. Maybe that would be a good way to say it, like a real icy snow. And it's just incredible. So I go over there and a big chunk might have floated up from the bottom. I grab a little kettlebell and just doink, doink, doink. I break it up. And I have really grown to just appreciate not only the cold water, but I really like the feeling of that pressure around my body of being in the ice. And of course, the water is just absolutely freezing. It's just gorgeous. And it's gotten to the point now where I get in there and I just take maybe 1 or 2 deep breaths and I'm totally relaxed. Water is probably 33, 34 degrees. And the really funny thing is after so many years of doing this, and especially over the past few years quite consistently, when I get out, I'm instantly warm. Where I used to notice back in the day when I would get in the ice bath, it would take me sometimes quite a while, especially if I stayed in 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, I might be kind of shivering for the next hour or so and have to run and find a heater or get in the sun. And I don't know, I got to say, I'm really digging it. So if after listening to this episode, you think you might want to invest in your own Morozko Forge, now I'm going to warn you, they are, I think, a couple of few $1,000s, if I don't recall correctly. And that's not attainable for everyone, of course. So, if you're someone who wants cold therapy, man, find a Russian banya, like a Russian spa, or of course, climate and season permitting, finding a freezing or frozen body of water is the best ever. I mean, honestly, that's my ultimate favorite, is just being immersed in nature. Of course, that's not going to happen in Texas in summer, so I'm not going to find cold water anywhere likely. So it's great to have the bath, but I always just like to let people know, you don't really have to spend tons of money to be healthy and feel good if you're willing to get out there and, find some resources. But for those of you that have a spa, a biohacking center, or you're well-heeled enough to get your hands on your own ice bath, you can, of course, go to morozkoforge.com. That's MOROZKOFORGE, morozkoforge.com. And these guys were super kind to throw down a discount for you listeners. If you use the code Luke150, you get $150 off a cold forge or the filtered forge models. And if you want to go for the big kahuna, the Prism Forge, a really nice one, you can save $500 with the code Luke500. So that's morozkoforge.com. And of course, you can find those clickable in the show notes. And on that matter, speaking of show notes, you can find all of our sponsors, including the Morozko Forge, actually, for that matter. But it just saved you a bunch of links. But in case you don't want to go on my site, you can go directly to theirs. But mine is lukestory.com/store. And while you're there, make sure to check out the video I made with my Morozko Forge ice bath, where Brian Hoyer and I did a test for EMF. Now, I was a little nervous. Anytime I get a new piece of technology I'm like, oh God, I hope these guys thought of the EMF thing, right? Some people make really great healing products, but if they plug into something, you run the risk of EMF or having to have Bluetooth on your head or something. Like, for example, right here at my feet, let me grab it. I've got something called the Hat Bee, which is just the most badass mood altering ring of a magnetic field that you put around your head or your neck. And I'm sure I'll do a show about it soon because it's just freaking amazing. But when I first got that, for example, you would activate it from an app on your phone and you had to use Bluetooth, of course, for connectivity. And then you couldn't turn the Bluetooth off. So I returned it. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to wear Bluetooth around my head. What do you think I am, insane? I'm trying to get healthy here. And then they reiterated on the Hat Bee and they put it out much like the Oura Ring and the Apollo, 2 other tech devices that sync to your phone so that you could turn the Bluetooth off. So going back to the Morozko Forge ice bath and the video that you can find on my site, on the Morozko page in my store, I was like, oh man, I hope this thing doesn't have EMF because it's plugged in, right? And so Brian tested it with his super fancy, expensive equipment. And we found that not only did the Morozko Forge ice bath not produce any EMF that came anywhere near your body, it also is incredible for grounding or earthing for those of you that are familiar with that practice due to an incredibly high DC current, which is a current that comes from the earth that you do want on and around your body, that's produced just because the whole thing's made of metal and it's filled with water, and especially due to the fact that I put some Epsom salt in mine, which makes the water even more conductive. So that video is pretty cool. We break down the whole bath system, the ozone situation, how it makes ice, how it melts the ice and floats to the top. And more interestingly, at least for me, was the great surprise that it was 0 EMF and also incredible for grounding. So super cool video. You can find it at lukestory.com/store. I think that video would be in the biohacking section. When you go to my store, there's all of these different categories. One would be superfood and herbs, food, sleep, EMF, and one's just called biohacking, and that's where you'll find this video. So we spent quite a bit of time shooting it and editing it. It's a really cool video. I think you might enjoy it. For those of you that listen to this and you're like, wait, I can't visualize it. Show me. Well, we show you there. I want to thank our sponsors, beekeepersnaturals.com/LukeStory, bodybio.com, and justthrivehealth.com. And you can find all of those at lukestory.com/store. However, if you want to go direct, go to beekeepersnaturals.com/LukeStory. The code there is LukeStory for 15% off. Bodybio.com code is Luke20 for 20% off all products. And justthrivehealth.com/Luke, where you will use a code Luke15 for 15% off. So trying to save you guys some cash here with the discount codes. Hopefully it's helping. And like I always say, and I'm going to keep saying it, man, because I know a lot of people spend a lot of money they probably don't have. I used to do this. I mean, I used to literally rack up my credit cards to buy products that I thought were good for my health. Now think about that. Like the implication in terms of the degradation to my mental health and my stress level. So maybe I'm buying some bulk ashwagandha to help with cortisol, right? But I'm creating cortisol by racking up my credit card, spending money that I didn't have at the time. Now, it took me a few years to figure that out and sort that out and become more, responsible, and also just work smarter and become more resourceful, where I could actually save up some money and buy something like an ice bath or some of these bigger ticket items. But I want you to know that, man, if you really want to be healthy and you're into biohacking and all this, it can all be found in nature through sun, breath work, prayer, meditation, getting hot, getting cold. Most of the things that really move the needle can be found in nature. And that, of course, goes for eating food from a farmer's market, right? I know a lot of people gripe about the cost of organic food, but that's because you're going to canola foods. That's my name for Whole Foods. Farmers markets are a great way to get food, and you want to eat food that spoils. I think that's a great way to put it. I recently interviewed, I think it was, Dr. Anthony Gustin. That show will come out soon. We talk about the keto diet and his trip to Africa to hang out with the Huzda people, with our former guest, Paul Saladino. And he said, yeah, man, eating is super simple. Eat food that spoils, right? So that means like not processed food, not packaged food. Now I'm, someone who eats a bit of packaged food here and there. I recently just got some cereal called, I think it's called Magic Spoon. Shit is delicious. And it doesn't spoil. You know what I mean? I didn't get it at the farmer's market. So I'm not perfect. Trust me. Far from it. In all ways, but especially with the diet, I do the best I can. But I know that myself and most people feel better when you're eating clean animal products and, plants that are fresh and local, whether they be fruits, vegetables, etc. I think most people do. So back to what I'm saying, you don't have to go spend thousands and thousands of dollars to be healthy. Now, if you want to optimize and be next level and be, just feeling incredibly vital, well, yeah, then there are ways such as an ice bath or red light therapy or different things you can do to invest in yourself and your physical being to increase your energy. And I probably do 100 freaking things a day. And that's how I'm able to do all the stuff I do. I'm extremely productive and prolific most of the time. And I'm 50 years old. And there's just no way I could be doing that if I wasn't doing all of these interventions and practicing the various modalities that I do to stay that way. So just want to let you know, if you're someone who's like, well, I'm missing out on the party because I don't have the financial abundance at the moment, don't trip. Just get outside, integrate with nature. Think about the stuff that is about to be talked about in a future episode. I can't forget if it came out already. I'm getting mixed up with my numbers, but Mr. Boyd Vardy, the lion tracker. I mean, I talked to that guy and it's like, oh, all you got to do is just get outside and interface with nature and the natural world and realize that you are not separate from it, but rather woven into it, into the fabric of life. And in that fabric is where we find the energy and vitality and really happiness. So that is my sermon at the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Lifestylist Podcast. As always, I will close by saying, if you enjoyed this show, please do myself, yourself, your friends, and our guests a favor and share it far and wide. See you next week.